And welcome back to Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar, episode number 143. Well, it has been a while, far too long, and I hope I can make up for that time span with the quality of this Aerostar today. I won't even get into it, holidays, and I was sick for a week. I'm still kind of sick, but I had a little time here. I'm in yet another location, Janky Studio version 64.5. Always shuffling around here. But the important thing is we're here and we're going to talk about Ford Aerostar, and so happy to continue on with this series and, with any luck, pick up some momentum. But plenty of momentum headed into this one. So I guess we should just get to it. So without further ado, here we have a 1986 Ford Aerostar listed for an undisclosed amount because it's already sold, and this won't be like my usual one. I think this is Classics Auto Gallery, Classics and Beyond Auto Gallery. I believe this is in Wayne, Michigan. So listed in Wayne, Michigan for an undisclosed amount. Now, I did do a little research on this one. I tracked down a little bit, and I believe we have a sold price of $9,398. So $10,000 for an Aerostar, just about, the ceiling of the Aerostar market. And if you just take one look at this Aerostar, buying any classic car of this caliber for less than $10,000 is an absolute screaming deal as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, you can see I have my black shirt on, and that corresponds to the color of this vehicle. I always love a black Aerostar. They're super rare. I mean, in terms of a factory color, I gotta believe it's the rarest color. And I've never seen black on an 86. There's so many things about this Aerostar that we'll get into, and hopefully this will be a very nice, long, juicy episode of Year of the Aerostar. So let's get right into it. This is obviously a classic dealership. Now, this came to me through a random Google search. I was trying to see what BBS basket style wheels would look like on an Aerostar. I was just doing a little bit of daydreaming, and this happened to pop up. I click on the listing. It was like a third party saying it was listed for sale, some little write-up, and it wasn't Jalopnik, I don't think, but it was one of these sites linked to the actual dealership or reseller, whatever. Obviously a nice space they have, and unfortunately it was already sold. I'd be probably, calling every bank and uncle and who knows who else to try to completely wreck my financial situation that I've been trying to improve for the last 3 or 4 years, just to beg, borrow, and steal 10 grand to buy this vehicle, because this is truly a once in a lifetime. I think this thing is so incredible. Some of the best pictures of an Aerostar I've ever seen. If we just blow this up, I mean, the light bouncing off it and everything. Obviously you have these like sort of neon lights. It's a lot of these shops or whatever will have that sort of like old, 60s, 70s, 50s diner thing going on, lots of lights. And, if you've ever watched Jay Leno's Garage, the typical aesthetic. But those like sort of red and blue and green lights bouncing off, just the impeccable paintwork on this Aerostar is surely a sight. We have these like sort of, I have to believe, aftermarket wheels there, like the basket weave like I was looking for. Even the tires look like they look like older tires, or they look like a Pirelli tire that was kind of on my Fiat. I'm not sure what they are. Maybe they're just a vintage style tire. Even the tires seem to fit the stance and the look of this vehicle. It has a lot of class, a lot of panache to it, and I like that word a lot, and I guess I've been looking for an excuse to use it, and certainly this vehicle has panache. So let's get into the description, and then there's 123 photos. I'm not sure if we're going to go through every single one of those photos, but the fact that this is an 86, I have an 86 Aerostar. If you've watched my Janky life recently, you know that it's nowhere near the condition as this. But there's something about the first year of the Aerostar that's just, the aesthetic of it, and the styling of it with the grille, and it's I always say the Aerostar transcended it. It went from the 80s to the 90s, and it's both an 80s vehicle and a 90s vehicle, and the subtle changes they made really date the vehicle to that time period. And this is definitely an 80s vehicle. It has the towing mirrors on it. The badging was in a different location. Grille, obviously, your headlights were a little slightly different. They weren't the flush lenses. They were the old inset glass bulbs. So much to talk about, but let's read the pretty ample description here. Description. Please visit our website to view a full HD photo set of this vehicle. You can also head to our YouTube page, so maybe we'll, maybe I'll invite you to watch that video on your own. I don't know if we'll have time to get into it. Okay, 1986 Ford Aerostar van, 39K original miles, one owner, black with gray interior. So I just can imagine the person who owned this since new and only drove it 40,000 miles and must have like waxed it every week. Oh boy. Oh my goodness. As if it couldn't get any jankier. This camera setup is very improvised, and if this happens again, we'll maybe stop the program and try to get into a... Can you see me still? As I'm talking about the owner of this vehicle waxing his car every weekend, I can't keep a camera on a tripod. Okay. Well, it wouldn't be Janky AF without some, technicanky, difficanky. So there you go. That one's for free. Okay. This 1986 Ford Aerostar is a rare time capsule of 80s practicality and style. See, we're off to a great running start with the description in here. A rare time capsule of 80s practicality and style, showing just over 39K original miles and proudly single owner history since new. Well, okay. If it's a single owner, that implies that is since new. If it's a three owner, then it's three owners since new. The ownership history, by definition, has to go back to when it was new. Okay, I'm getting a little cheeky. Finished in classic black. I wonder if that's actually the color name. The van rides on a set of period-correct ET snowflake-style wheels wrapped in Firestone tires. Okay, they're Firestones, giving it a subtle custom flair while maintaining a vintage feel. I gotta say, they really, I mean, they're selling it hard, but they're doing a great job with their language. Inside, the cabin is outfitted with gray cloth bucket seats in both front and middle rows, along with a full third row bench seat in the rear, offering spacious and comfortable seating for up to 7. The interior is clean, original, and well preserved, showing the care and pride of long-term ownership. Power comes from a 3-liter V6 engine paired with an automatic transmission, delivering smooth, reliable performance. Well, delivering something smoothly and reliably. I'm not sure if performance is necessarily the operative word, but that's okay. This Aerostar has been meticulously maintained, making it a solid and dependable driver quality van that's ready for road trips, weekend cruising, or even vintage shows. I would put vintage shows on the top of that list. These early model Aerostars are increasingly hard to find, true, especially with low mileage, original ownership, and this level of preservation. See, this is what I love, these early model Aerostars. So the market is finally starting to, I always talk about 80s versus 90s Aerostars. The market is even starting to recognize, this is what I love so much about the Aerostar sort of pantheon, is even, we looked at like a 86, I'll try to find the episode number, the sort of gray over blue two-tone, very similar to Harry's van. Shout out to Harry. And, they use the same words, cream puff. I think that might have been an original owner. But the fact that they're distinguishing between early and late Aerostars, like 86, 87, you can kind of do it by the grills. That kind of, you can break it up by that. 86, 87, 88 was the original grill style. And then 89, 90, 91 was the newer style grill with the Ford logo in the middle, and then after 92 to 97, it was the newer grill with the Ford logo up at the top, and that's the one most people know about. So, but the 80s Aerostars are different. In some cases, the engines are different. The trim work is different. Again, badging. Interior was different. So the fact that they're making that distinguish, you see a Lamborghini Espada for sale, right? Is it series 1, 2, or 3, first, third, or third generation? Same with the Jaguar XKE, right? Is it series 1, 1.5, 2, or 3? So any of these, a lot of these older classic cars, they did have sort of a long run, especially if they were successful. I think the Jaguar XJS has like a Series 1 and 2. And there were subtle changes made along the way, but the car itself is like this iconic thing. So if you're sort of a aficionado and you're like, oh, I got an XKE, it's like, oh, what series is it? The fact that now with the Aerostar, we can start making those distinguishments and, demarcation points within the evolution of a vehicle is like a very exciting thing to me, because it's like people are starting to take notice and actually delve into the fine detail of these vehicles. So that's very exciting. And they're not wrong. The early model Aerostars, like for a while, I think the first way back when I was doing this on Instagram, like Aerostars of Craigslist or whatever, which I did like 150 posts or so before I even started Year of the Aerostar. Their 86s, I found maybe two or three 86s ever listed for sale. 87s and 88s are still rare. I almost feel like I see more 86s now than I see 88s, and 87 is maybe on par with 86. But those first 3 years, those are sort of gems. Now, I have purchased myself 2 1986 Aerostars, of course. And the first one, when I got my first brown 1986 Aerostar, I didn't really know what I was getting. I was just an Aerostar, and it was a manual transmission. So I was like, hooray. After I bought it, started to delve into it. This is the great thing about, this is like a pattern in my life where I become obsessed with something, and I'm not sure why, toilets, whatever. And the further I delve into it, the more I realize why I became obsessed with it. So it's almost like happens backwards. And then the more you learn about it, and as you learn about it, you start to identify all these qualities about this vehicle. Like, what do they say? 80s time capsule of 80s practicality and style. How often are practical vehicles, judged by their styling? In the modern day, everything that's practical now, a CRV or whatever, like, you're not really thinking about the styling of it. But the Aerostar was so cool because I always call it the most aspirational vehicle ever, because it's this practical vehicle it's based on versatility, and it can do anything. It can kind of like shapeshift from family vehicle to work vehicle, and all that's great. But not only did they sell you on that, but then they also, like, they did this spaceship design. The name Aerostar, it's aerodynamic, and the star connotes like a spaceship. So like, they thought about the creation. They thought about the creation they were making at every single level of its existence, of its character. And I think that makes the Aerostar unique. And it also, if it did have peers, it's becoming increasingly rare that cars are sort of thought of in that way. And now maybe it's just the modern automotive market doesn't allow for it. But in my view, there's just a lack of imagination going on now. And the Aerostar, I think, did it as well as or better than any other vehicle, certainly any other mass market vehicle, ever created. So that's my little spiel. Okay. Whether you're a collector of unique 80s vehicles or just looking for a cool and capable classic van, or they should mention you're an Aerostar enthusiast, because now that's becoming its own separate category. This example is a standout, no doubt. If you're interested, please reach out to our knowledgeable sales staff today! ! We offer shipping and financing as well, so they offer in-house financing. You can call us at, and I'll let the number there. Want to stop by and see it for yourself? Come check it out at Classic and Beyond Auto Gallery's indoor showroom. Give us a call to schedule a viewing appointment beforehand if you're interested in seeing a specific vehicle. Well, I wish I could go out to Wayne, Michigan about 6 months ago. And, again, this vehicle allegedly sold for under $10,000, which I know is a lot for an Aerostar. It'd be interesting to see what the price new adjusted for inflation would be, because say this vehicle is probably around $12,000 new. So adjusting for inflation, that's probably like, $30,000 or whatever. So the fact that you're getting it in almost new condition now, like the depreciation on this thing is amazing. Like, how many classics you see Honda Civics now that are going for $40,000, $30,000. and they probably cost less than this when they were new. So the Aerostar is still an incredibly undervalued proposition in the classic marketplace. And I do think something like this, I don't know, I understand that I am overly enthusiastic about this vehicle to a degree that most people, basically everybody else other than me, the market's never going to get Toyota Supra or whatever. And then on top of that, one of the great things about the Aerostar that devalues it is its quantity. They made over 2 million of them, so there's so many out there. And yet, to find one like this has got to be a one of one. Like there's no way there's another Aerostar this clean with this color and this year, this combination of accessories, the spec and all that. One interesting thing to note, they do mention that it's a 3-liter V6, so we can finally put this to bed. We've kind of already put it to bed, but the 3-liter V6 was definitely offered from new, and Wikipedia's thing about the 2.3 liter and the 2.8 liter, the 4 and the 6-cylinder respectively, were only offered for 86 and 87, and then they went strictly to the 3.0. That means for me, the only thing that means for me, well, one, that information is incorrect and it should be updated. Maybe I should be the one to update it. But also, if you do have an Aerostar with a 2.3 liter or a 2.8 liter, it's exceedingly rare because the 3 liter was already being offered in 86. So for example, my 2.3 liter 4-cylinder with a manual transmission, I gotta figure is extraordinarily rare. But that's, feather in my cap, I guess. I got lucky, and I bought that vehicle for $1,800. But it would take me much more than $10,000 to get it back into this condition. And as Jay Leno says sometimes, it's only original once. So I guess I shouldn't really give him credit, but he says it a lot, so I guess I'll give him credit. It's just a truism. So there you have it. A couple things. Okay, so the things that immediately stand out to me, we have, of course, the V6 engine, the 3-liter V6. I do love this badging. It kind of harkens back almost to like, Ford had a famous V8 where the 8 sort of swirls around the V, but this was sort of like their V6 version of it. That it harkens back almost like the 20s and 30s, that badging. And it's interesting in this application because it kind of contrasts a little bit with all the other Aerostar styling. Like it's very like 80s futuristic. I always like to point out that this A in the Aerostar, this is how like when they designed this vehicle, they just thought of everything. Even the A in the Aerostar mimics the profile of the front of the van. I mean, it's subtle, but they knocked that out of the park from like just the design. And a holistic design is like a big buzzword now, like doing things holistically, not like holistic medicine, but looking at the entire picture, whole systems thinking, as my father likes to say. And this is such a good example of whole systems thinking because every single thing like corresponds to itself in this beautiful way. This running board is also, I have to imagine, aftermarket, like these wheels. You see this a lot. Maybe it was like a factory dealer option or something. Personally, I'm not the huge fan because I feel like it does kind of take away from the purity of the Aerostar's design, but certainly it's a nice little sort of like period feature. The running boards on the sport models, like my 93 Sport, it looks to have a towing hitch too. It's nice. Really nice quality towing hitch. Good condition like everything else. I like those running boards. They're a little bit more integrated and they have the aero swoopiness to them. This is sort of like a piece of metal that's kind of slapped on. You can take it or leave it, but a nice piece nonetheless. Okay, the interior, this is kind of a lot of Aerostars from this era did have gray. Look at how clean these seats look. I mean, this is just like insanely clean. These perforations, of course, these two-tone seats, not just in color. These are obviously only one tone in color other than the piping, but the two different fabrics. Now this also has this like wooden, like a lot of these camper retrofitting companies would put these wood paneling everywhere just to like gussy it up. I think this is more just the center console, but these aftermarket center consoles are popular. My 1990, my red Aerostar, red velvet, has an aftermarket center console that has almost like a fake snake skin on it. And shout out to Jason, who told me that that was indeed aftermarket. This bag, or this strap that's like wired around the wheel, incredibly popular. My brown one had it on. I eventually took it off. It was a tan one, because my brown Aerostar has a tan interior. I could never just, something about the wrap around it bothered me. And also I like a very thin steering wheel, and the Aerostar, especially the first gen interior, pre-facelift interior, does have a very thin steering wheel, which I just like the feel of. But obviously this cover has kept the steering wheel exceedingly clean, I'm sure. Little these little things, looks out of place to my eye. Not period accurate, but that's okay. The gray interior is really cool, and it's so gray that it's almost white, like by contrast to the darker grays in here. It really is 80s looking, and I really like this gray, this very light gray interior, especially with the black. Now I think it would have looked great with like a gold interior too, but you're going like maximum 80s, monochromatic, or what's the word for when it's black and white? There's a word for that, something chromatic. Anyways, it fits very well with the black exterior. Everything grayscale. There you go. Everything is in grayscale in here. This is a cool exercise here that they've done nicely, and I always take, and again, shout out to them for taking immaculate photos. But when you see the Aerostar in different depths of fields, like this is more of like a telephoto shot, and it looks very flat. And then when you see it in well, this is lower too, but a little bit wider, you realize just how different it looks in these two perspectives, and you realize, look at how low, I talk about this, how low the lights are in the entire, like there's so much above the lights in terms of your height. They sit actually very low, or normally you'd see, oh, the lights are sort of in the middle of the car, but there's a lot above it. The lights in the grill, and it really is kind of like a car size. By modern standards, it's car size. It's not even really van sized. There's a great profile shot there. This is just like a lesson in how to take good photos of a vehicle. Super high res, every conceivable possible angle, from the bottom, from the top. This is a great shot too. You don't see the Aerostar from this angle very much, and you can see the big center console, or driver controls that jut out there, instrument panel. These chrome mirrors are beautiful. The paint is just glistening. So much to say. This is a nice shot of your interior with this center console. I mean, it is gray, but again, it's almost bordering on like a pale white, or a faded white. It's very bright, and it contrasts so nicely with the dark gray carpets. And then you're just like little red accents on your seats and on your door card there. These like nice leather. Everything is I know I'm cheap plastic. People don't like cheap plastic and everything, but it's for the 80s, it was a quite high quality interior, especially these little accents. They did so many just nice little touches. The piping on the seats, so many nice little things. Let's look at these wheels, these ET wheels, these basket weave with like a sort of a black center cap. They are Firestone tires, and they are like sort of like a retro style tire. I don't know, something about the sidewall just looks like an old race car tire. The bumpers are not body colored, which is interesting. They're just a dark gray, but with the black insert in the middle, I don't remember seeing that. I guess it does. That is how it usually looks. It just looks different on a black Aerostar. You're not used to seeing that. But the dark gray bumpers, God, do not touch. That's funny. Yeah, just immaculate. I mean, words don't do it justice. I can't imagine seeing this thing in real life. And someone got this for under 10 grand. We saw that other 86 on Bring a Trailer. Now this is the that went for 6,000. That was a cargo, and I don't know if it was a one owner. Excuse me, I just got to take some water. Shout out to Shiffy and Sweet Pea, and little young B Schifano, first initial B, who gave me this wonderful water bottle. Go Knicks. Okay, so this being the XLT model, as you saw on the badge, and excuse my sniffling, I'm still kind of sick. I had a horrible week-long illness last week. I think the flu's been going around. I'm not sure if this is a lacquer paint, quite a bit of orange peel on there, but it was the 80s. The XLT model, meaning you get, oh, is there a little dent there? There is a little dent there, okay. It's human, and there's a little bit of a corrosion on the end of your tailpipe, probably from water leaking out of it, corroding that away. So there is a little bumper. You could probably fix that, although finding a bumper is tough. So that is one minor blemish there. But, get the first one out of the way. Where was I? The trip computer, as we see the nice door card, again, two-tone, and all this stuff. This stuff just never, even a really nice kept Aerostar, it's never going to be in this nice condition. You can see just the vibrancy of the colors, the power window and locks buttons, so rich in color and so just no warping. All these things get warped. The screws will fall out of this eventually. Little pieces of plastic will snap. Just in immaculate condition. I wish I could find that trip computer again. Okay, so here's the trip computer. So this was, an XLT version. You have average fuel economy, how much fuel used, instant economy. I forget what DT is. Someone tell me that. Average speed. Again, very, very advanced. So the Corvette came out, right? Famously, there was no 83 Corvette, although there is one in existence in Kentucky. Long story. That digital display was like, very futuristic at the time. And this was only 2 years later. And in a family minivan / work van, you have, as nice. I actually think this is almost nicer. And it's even got the profile of the Aerostar, as the vehicle, not just a generic vehicle. This is like a high-end luxury thing, not just to give on a digital display, give an actual, simulation of the vehicle that looks like the vehicle. I even think, maybe it's just the way they form the graphic, but if you look at the passenger side, there's 3 lines here, and there's only 2 on this side, and there's only a sliding door on the passenger side on these Aerostars. So it's like almost like they actually put in an extra line to show the passenger. I mean, such detail for the 80s. And now, of course, you look at a Tesla Model 3 or everything now shows a picture of your exact car, as opposed to just generic car. But at the time, very advanced. Looks like it might need some wiper fluid. I almost wondered if they copied if they copied the, now we're getting really far afield here, the instrument cluster of the Corvette, or it was inspired by it, because you have your rev counter up here, and then under that is like your fuel and stuff like that. Very similar to the Corvette of the time, the C4 Corvette. And even this, like, again, even the backlighting on your gauge cluster is nice and bright and illuminated. It's not faded. It's not cracked. So the digital instrument cluster, the trip computer, overhead console there, power windows, locks, all these things were, on the upper trim levels. And I think you even have, like an equalizer, a graphic equalizer here. And even these light up too, which is just amazing. I love these old school equalizers in cars. And it really, it's a fun tactile thing. People complain about not having tactile controls in their vehicles. And also it's very practical and usable too, to adjust your, looks like we have a cassette deck, and again, digital display on the radio. So and then you have a balance control. I do love a cassette deck on a vehicle. I think cassette was really better than a CD player in a vehicle. There's something about cassettes. They're less fragile, they're compact. So I love a cassette player in a vehicle, especially of this generation. So we can look at some underside photos. There's some surface corrosion going on. Obviously 40,000 miles isn't nothing, and it's the fact that this car is as clean as it is, being driven 40,000 miles, especially in Michigan, is quite impressive. So we can forgive a couple little minor things here. A little bit of rust going on that trailer hitch. I'd probably take that off anyways. This would be a cruiser for me, show car. Rear bench, again, plush seats. This pull out drink holder console thing. I wonder if there's a picture of that down. Of course, your famous rear headphone jacks and everything, so people can listen to the radio in the back on headphones. The kids, we have our spare tire. Oh, that's interesting. They just put it under the bench seat. Actually, that may have been the factory location for these early Aerostars. Eventually, I believe it went under the vehicle, which is a terrible place for a spare tire. There you go, manufactured 386. Okay, so this is a little bit later, although I think mine was even manufactured, my brown 86, and that was still a 2.3 liter in 86. Maybe it was like December of 85 or something like that. But the Aerostar was supposed to come out in 1985. There's a great article on this. And then it got delayed to 1986, partly because of some of the automated systems they were doing to build it were just a little behind schedule. There was, computers and automation used in the manufacture of the Aerostar. So it really was a state-of-the-art vehicle at the time. But this is, so the 85, the early ones were built in 85, sold as 86 models, like cars are always a model year ahead of the actual year they're made. But this was made in March of 1986. I would love to see a Marty report to see when the actual date was. That'd be that would have been a nice touch if they threw in a Marty report with this vehicle. But excuse me. So it was a little bit later, so that would kind of make sense that the 3-liter was in it. Nice dome light here. Again, everything functional, everything working. It looks like we have our rear climate control too. I believe those are vents. So you have some rear climate control going on as well. I believe they're vents. Correct me if I'm wrong there. I wonder if we have any others in the car. Okay, obviously the giant shift lever, well, I'm convinced is the longest floor-mounted automatic transmission shift lever of any production vehicle. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure this is the longest. And you still do have to pop it to the left before you go down in the gear, which I didn't actually know until I got my 1990 Aerostar that you have to push that down. I figured it was just straight away. Okay, unlock, lock, maybe a little bit of warping going on there, but I got to tell you something. From the factory, I don't think these radios fit in the center console. I think there was probably warping plastic from the factory. I've never seen one that's fit perfectly. Let's see if we see that. That's pretty close, but you can see there's some, this corner here is a little tight and then it widens out in the middle here. I think that was probably just, whatever molds they were using. It's not a Rolls Royce here, but probably more reliable than a Rolls Royce. So we see the muffler again, a little corrosion there. Nothing too crazy. What can you say? The wheels are spot on. It would have been nice if it came with the original wheels, but I wonder when those were put on by the owner. They ordered a brand new black top of the line XLT Ford Aerostar. Maybe they had the dealer add this running board, and I wonder if they went right out and bought these black basket weave or black center cap basket weave wheels to put on it, and then they were like, in Wayne, Michigan, cruising around, just the bee's knees. And then they held on to it forever, and then, you wonder, is this an estate or running boards? Okay, so maybe we could get some. Definitely looks like aftermarket, but again, might have been dealer installed. 14-inch wheels is so funny on like a minivan, like a 7-person vehicle. 14-inch wheels. That's only 1 inch bigger than the wheels on my Fiat X19, which is like a little pea shooter of a go-kart of a car. That's so funny. 14 is such a funny tire size or wheel size. Yeah, there you have it. Just incredible. I welcome you to go. The black slide for the door really looks good on the black Aerostar. It really does. I love a white Aerostar because it's like this contrast. It's like piano, black and white. But the black Aerostar is awesome because without even trying, it looks like a very... it's almost like the vehicle was designed to be black with all the seals and gaskets and everything, but then you have these nice chrome. It's funny, I always compare the Aerostar to like a sports car because it is rear-wheel drive and you could get it with a manual. And actually the 2.3-liter 4-cylinder was in the Fox body Mustang. But the chrome, I always liked on the Audi S4s. I believe it's the B7 S4. Like the Bam Margera S4. The chrome, there was more of a polished aluminum, but the chrome mirrors I think look so good on like a sporty vehicle. So these big chrome towing mirrors just sticking out proudly. I really like that it has the towing mirrors on it. I think it really goes with the basket weave wheels and the running boards. The little plastic, passenger mirrors, they're fine, but I think I might eventually just retrofit all my Aerostars with the towing mirrors, because I think they look of the period, and they're big and bulky and kind of like solid, and they just fit the look, and they're very practical too. I think they're probably a little bit easier to see out of than the little tiny passenger mirrors. So there you go. I think this one really delivered. Look at this. The other thing, I've said this before, but the Aerostar is obviously very angular and wedge-shaped, but if you look close, it actually has a lot of curve in it. Like there's a big swooping curve from the center of your hood down to the sides. Everything actually is rounded off, so it's like a chamfer in woodworking. Everything is kind of chamfered. It's not as sharp and angular as like the Cadillac XLR, those like the CTS when they got super angular. This did have angles, but it had a lot of really subtle curves in it too. And so it's this great merging of like, space age, futuristic, but also there's a lot of like organicness to it, especially as it ages. You realize that, and again, it was made, by union workers in the Hazleton factory in St. Louis, but also it incorporated, automation and robotic design. So it's this, and the dual purpose vehicle, passenger, cargo, like it has this wonderful duality about it where it in the big picture, it's versatility. It can do anything, but at its core, it's sort of like, it just has a duality to it. It has this two sides of the coin. There's a yin and yang to the Aerostar, and that's part of the reason why I'm so fascinated by it. It really just stands alone as a vehicle. There's nothing like it. I know, like drivetrain wise and market wise, it was very similar to the Chevy Astro and GMC Safari. They were both rear wheel drive, 5,000 pound towing capacity, all-wheel drive option. I think the Astro had manual transmission options too. But then ultimately both of those were competing with the Dodge Caravan, which was front-wheel drive, more car-based. These are more, truck van-based. But even, the Astro to me, while it has a larger following, they made it for longer. They made it all the way till 2004, I believe. The Aerostar, just in terms of aesthetics, in terms of the ethos of it, the story behind it, the narrative, the character, the identity of it, it's so much stronger to me in terms of, persona and how iconic it is. So that's my bias. But yeah, if you know, you know, right? Oh, so this has the deflate and inflate. I have this on my 86. Now my 86 is weird because they're like pleather seats. I've never seen another Aerostar like mine with like vinyl seats that weren't the bucket seats, because in the cargo versions you get these like little sports car bucket seats, but mine has the passenger seats, but they're clad in vinyl, which I've never seen, so that makes it unique. And that's the weird thing about these Aerostars. Yes, there was, the base model, the XL and the XLT, and you had color choices, blah, 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 but it's almost like I've never seen two identical Aerostars. Like they always, especially in the early ones, like they say here, there was all these, they were still kind of like working out the kinks, the engine, in a vehicle like this, it's not going to have the historiography that like a Ferrari 360 GTO does, is that right? 360 GTO, what's the one that sells for $250 million now? People are the Shelby GT500. People aren't going to track down every single VIN number and say this was built on, although with a Marty report you could, but there's not the intense scrutiny on the infinitesimal details of when the vehicle was being made. But I have a feeling that Ford was still kind of like just throwing things at the vehicle to get them out the door, and there was lots of little differences on these vehicles in again, like the seats and weird stuff like that, where they were still kind of tinkering with it and making little changes. So that's fun to look at all these years later and be like, oh, that's like one little thing that's a little bit different that I haven't seen before. Color combinations. They were always changing their color combinations. And because this vehicle ran for 12 years from 86 to 97, you know, it evolved. Look at these beautiful seats. And these are kind of actually more of a two-tone, where the outside gray is darker than the inside gray. Tiny a little bit of fading there, but no biggie. Okay, so we're pushing 40 minutes here, so a long one, but I wanted to really, you know, digest and share with you all and give you all my thoughts on this Aerostar. Obviously, the struts still work. Just you know, these are some nice shots right there. That front grille, so simple and yet so timeless. The way the headlight bezels scoop back sort of against the grain of the hood line. Always little yin and yang feng shui, dualistic, you know, tensions in the design of the vehicle. There goes something else. Okay, there you have it. Before everything else falls apart here, just an absolutely incredible 1986 Ford Aerostar passenger XLT in black, classic black as they call it, with these wonderful wheels on it. And this was sold again for less than $10,000. So, you know, try to beat that on the classic car market. Incredible. Nice to be back with you all. Sorry I'm under the weather. Sorry for the sniffles and the, you know, whatever other things dropping and going crazy and me taking water breaks. But hey, that's what you come to expect, and hopefully that's what you love about Janky AF. The jankiest automotive channel on all of YouTube and the whole internet for that matter. Got my Ford hat back, thanks to G6 for this hat. So, you know, we're ramping up here. Things are happening. We're in a new year, and hopefully that portends a lot of Aerostar content coming your way, and hopefully even, you know, some in-person real Aerostar. I got to fire my green one up. It's just taunting me in the driveway, looking at me. Can't wait to drive it. So there you have it. This has been Year of the Aerostar here on Janky AF. I have to respond to many of your comments. And the last thing I'll say is, I've said this before, but, you know, I've been derelicting my duties as Janky AF, you know, channel proprietor here. Haven't been responding to comments. Haven't really, you know, it's been a trying period lately. But every time I get nervous and go and check my stats or whatever, a couple more people have subscribed. A couple more people have left comments, like talking about someone just bought a Chevy Malibu Max from that video I did forever ago. So it's kind of really just warms my heart that people, you know, check in and watch these crazy person videos. So yeah, thank you. What was I saying? This has been Year of the Aerostar here on Janky AF. We'll have another one coming for you very soon. And until then, Janky do thanky.
One small step for man, one giant leap